Good morning, everybody. It is time for another great episode of GoJo and Golic. Here's what we have coming up for you today. So, the great debate in honor of the election. We will talk AFC North questions and answers, get a little debate going on. And watch guide, there is so much going on this weekend. WNBA, NFL, college football. We will get you all queued up on what you need to be tuning into. Plus, injury report. We will break down all the injuries, news, and notes in the NFL. All that and more coming up on GoJo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. We got a great show for everybody, as always. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live when you can, Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Jason Fitz, our buddy from Yahoo Sports, going to join us off the top of the second hour as we check in with him. Big blow against the Raiders this first weekend. We'll tap in on what that looks like and maybe whip around the rest of the NFL a little bit with him. But, Dad, as we get started this morning, we have to pick up where we started yesterday. The news of the body cam footage released after the detainment of Tyreek Hill in the lead up to the Miami Dolphins game and a win over the Jacksonville Jaguars this weekend. We've heard a lot now since that body cam footage was released. Yesterday, most notably from Tyreek Hill's attorneys and his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, who spent some time with our buddies over at the Dan Le Batard show. And Dad, we're going to play some sound for that for a second, but now we're in this age where, you know, we've seen the violations itself posted. I saw Tom Pelissero over at the NFL had that. He was cited for careless driving without a seatbelt near the stadium, was cited going about 60 miles an hour, which I know for a lot of people was a lot less than they were assuming, given what they heard about speeding and driving dangerously in the lead up to the stadium here now. And with sort of a day to process it, Dad, the whole situation, because you've heard that Dolphins players, even when Tyreek got to the locker room, didn't really have any idea before the game. It makes it all that much more wild to consider the circumstances of this, looking in the background of the video and seeing Hard Rock Stadium as the guy that would later go on to have 130 yards receiving inside that stadium was being roughed off outside of it by the police officers involved in this. It's just a crazy thing to consider.
Yeah, it is. And seeing the body cam and hearing the conversation back and forth. Listen, they were both at fault. They were both at fault. But the police were way more at fault. Way more at fault for escalating a situation instead of de-escalating a situation. Did Tyreek handle it well by saying, "Don't tap on my window, don't tap on," he was kind of aggravating. And again, I will say, did it warrant what happened to him? No, it did not. But he was a bit aggravating, and then rolling up the window and not complying to rolling it down. And I know he said he didn't want to draw attention. He could have rolled it down a little bit, which he eventually did. But the don't tap on the window. I mean, it just there was just no need, in my opinion, no need for that. But a hard period, a hard new paragraph. It did not warrant him getting ripped out of the car, knelt on, and roughed up the way he got roughed up. But in no way, shape, or form should it have escalated that highly.
Yeah, I think this is one of those when we look and compare it a lot to like the Scotty Scheffler situation, just because it was high-profile athlete right before they were getting ready to go apply their craft who had an encounter with law enforcement that went mega viral. In Scotty's case, the difference was he made it all the way to jail, did his warm-ups inside a jail cell, and then went back and played at Valhalla in Kentucky. And in this case with Tyreek, it obviously didn't get that far. We'll hear from Drew Rosenhaus about how this ended and what the situation looked like at the finish. But what we saw as the visual was far more jarring here because, Dad, yes, even in these moments, and athletes talk about this all the time, especially athletes of color, where, hey, my status at a certain point doesn't save me from the realities that come with people that look like me. And man, when you're on the ground telling police officers, hey, I just had surgery on my knee, and that officer uses as an invitation to go even further with pushing you down on the ground, that's one of those spots where I'm sure even as physically capable as Tyreek Hill was, you feel pretty helpless in a way that's got to be jarring. And you saw that in the reaction from Calais Campbell when he came over. I mean, think about Calais Campbell and the environment where anyone would talk to Calais Campbell the way that he was talked to there. But then on the other side, where the response from Calais Campbell would be genuine fear. And that's what that looked like, because he understood, hey, we all walked away from this situation. That's the best case scenario here. There are plenty of people where that hasn't been the case. And I think you saw, Dad, especially when Jonnu Smith and Calais Campbell came over, where this was really going out of control, to where all of a sudden these guys are parked on the side of the road, hazards on, going to try and talk about their friend, and are being shouted down by these officers before Calais Campbell himself was detained in a way that looked like it rattled both of them. And then they somehow all found a way to go play a football game.
Yeah, I mean, how they went and played the football game is amazing, because, again, we talk about, African Americans being pulled over. I mean, you and I, we can't relate to that at all. All we can do is watch what went on and give an opinion. And I don't know how the police officers cannot get reprimanded. We know one already is on administrative leave. I don't know how anybody can watch this, and even because the police union has already come out and say, if Tyreek Hill will have just complied, there would have been no issue. Again, did he comply perfectly? No. Did it warrant getting ripped out of the car and thrown on the ground? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
No, and I think it's one of those things. The police union obviously has put out their statement fully backing their guy, which you expect. It's like any union. They're going to come out and certainly be in support of the person on their side. But as far as the people on Tyreek Hill's side, we mentioned his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, who he was on the phone with during this detainment. You heard him saying, Drew, I'm getting arrested. So Drew Rosenhaus, already on his way to the scene, it appeared at that point, joined our friends at the Dan Le Batard show yesterday and maintained that Tyreek did nothing wrong.
Was he driving too fast or recklessly?
Not that I'm aware of. He says he wasn't. It's kind of hard to do that in traffic. You look at where he got pulled over, but I wasn't an eyewitness to that. Quite frankly, we were just, relieved that after all of this, he got a speeding, basically a speeding ticket, a reckless driving ticket, and a ticket for driving without a seatbelt. We were concerned the police would try to keep him away or take him into custody. We were quite honestly very relieved, and we'll get that stuff taken care of. But obviously, if he was, that certainly did not merit that type of outrageous conduct. And I know that almost everybody agrees with this sentiment. Tyreek did nothing that deserved the beating that he got and the physical treatment, much less Calais and Jonnu on top of that.
I agree.
And the jarring part is after all of this data, and I've referenced it before, Tom Pelissaro put out the picture of the citation he was handed. It was for less than $200. Like, all of this happened for a ticket that, remember, at the point that we met in the body cam footage, Tyreek had already given his license and information to the police officer. And basically, because, if he was speeding, he was on his way to the stadium. He was probably going to be late for being at the stadium, and thus why there was that sense of urgency from him. And he's basically saying, yeah, hey, do whatever you need to do. Like, I need to get to this game. I'm going to be late for this. Which, again, like, could he have said it in a nicer way? Absolutely. Sure, all that stuff is true and fine. But then everything we saw after that, again, when you go back to the visual of a ticket for less than $200 is wild to consider.
Like I said, it seemed to be one officer, as I said the other day, just had his fuse lit. Because as the one officer was trying to get him to roll the window down and saying, I'm going to break the glass and talking, the other one just came in and opened the door and ripped him out. I mean, he just lost it. He just lost it. So what Drew said is right. Whatever Tyreek did to be pulled over, and they said on the ticket estimated, so they didn't have a radar gun on him. They said estimated at 60 miles an hour. And then no seatbelt, which, okay, fine, whatever. But then it was not responding in kind to the police officers. But again, it was if the one officer doesn't kind of lose his stuff, and open the door and rip him out, I don't think we get here. And then I think the other officers just kind of mob mentality'd it. And said, okay, well, he started this, so we now have to back him and finish this. Because like I said the other day, it looked like one of those officers wanted nothing to do with him getting ripped out of the car and wanted nothing to do with it. But I think they all just kind of backed each other up when the one just kind of lost it. And I would, again, I don't know. I would imagine that's the one on administrative leave, and that's the one that may lose his job in all of this.
And I think,
and that's.
Sorry, I just
Jesse.
wanted to jump in and say, I do think, like, when you're looking at the situation, and I mean, you should never read the comments underneath posts on the internet, but a lot of people kept jumping in and saying he has tinted windows. So he's rolling up his window. Police officers don't know what's happening inside the car. So to me, it's like, okay, that is a valid point. That's why the officers were saying you need to roll your window down. Yep. He rolled it up, but there's about 1,000 steps in between them asking him to roll his window down and him not immediately complying, and like you said, him getting ripped out of the car. So then maybe you have to say, sir, you're not complying with us. We need you to step out of your vehicle. And so maybe they have to take him out of the car, right? But they don't have to throw him on the ground and put a knee on his back. No. So yes, he was doing things he shouldn't have been doing. You're not supposed to roll your window up, especially not when it's tinted. Like, that could be perceived as a threat to an officer. So then make him get out of the car and stand next to his car. You don't need to throw him on the ground. Like, it seems obvious, but apparently it's not.
No, and it's not, and it's why that officer now, who was identified, and now Tyreek Hill and his attorney, who released a statement, Julius Collins, calling for the immediate termination of the escalating officer. Because, Dad, I know Tyreek Hill made this point and said, what if I wasn't Tyreek Hill and what would have happened in this situation? But that's really what it's about, is if this is all it took to set that officer off in this instance, then what else could possibly happen out there in cases where maybe you wouldn't hear about it? Maybe it wouldn't be this high profile and be all over the news. And that's certainly the concern and the worry there. And so that's what's going to take place now with this. Drew Rosenhaus Rosenhaus mentioned that Tyreek Hill, wants to do some things in the community there that can be a bridge between the two. He talked about him shaking officers' hands when he left the scenes. Again, Drew Rosenhaus doing his work as Tyreek Hill's agent and putting all of this out there that he wants to go. And a couple of the other Dolphins players he said talk to want to be a part of turning this into a positive in that Miami community. So we'll wait and see what happens there, Dad. They all did maintain that'll be after Thursday Night Football. They're on a short week, by the way, against a division opponent, which we'll get to.
And for those that are saying, I wonder if it will affect, their play on Thursday. It didn't affect their play in real time. I mean,
it's unreal.
Tyreek Hill went out and had a game. Calais Campbell had a sack and a few tackles in the game. I mean, it didn't, outside of a slow start, in their game against Jacksonville down 14-0 in the second, they performed well. So I don't see this affecting their play tomorrow night.
It is an amazing reminder of athletes in general, but especially football players, given the violence of the sport, the ability to compartmentalize things and still go out there and perform. We talk about that all the time in terms of things like player injury, when you see player get carted off and then they blow the whistle and keep on going. And somehow these guys that just witnessed one of their friends suffer some horrific injury can go back out there and subject themselves to the same stuff. It finds its way into a lot of avenues with players in a way that is remarkable, should not be that way, and certainly in this instance should not be this way because this never should have happened. So that is what went on off the field, and we will wait to see the full ramifications of that as we go forward, Jesse. But as Dad mentioned, tomorrow night, they're going to play a football game against a division opponent where both teams kind of got off to a slow start this last weekend, but then started to look the part of two that we think could battle for the division crown.
Yeah, they did get off to a slow start, but they both ended up getting the win. Let's talk about this matchup between Bills and Dolphins. So historically, Josh Allen dominates the Dolphins, and Tua is not good against the Bills. So here's a stat. Against the rest of the AFC East, Tua is undefeated, but just 1-6 against the Bills. Now, Allen's been a big part of that. He's 11-2 against Miami, much better numbers against the Dolphins than Pats and Jets. So is this a major prove-it game for Tua? He certainly seems to think so.
Well, that's going to be what's written out there until we do something about that. That's going to be the narrative, that we can't beat the Bills, and until we do beat them and we beat them consistently, none of that's going to change. And we have an opportunity to do that this year. We have an opportunity to do that this Thursday.
So what do you guys think? Is he going to do it and show everybody Tua can beat the Bills?
Yeah, Dad, it's an interesting predicament they find themselves in because I think the Bills' style of play perfectly matches the styles of play that bother the Dolphins most in terms of winning games along the lines of scrimmage. That's what the Bills are all in on right now is Josh Allen, Cook, this rushing attack behind a veteran and returning offensive line, and then that defensive front four that can get after you without having to rush guys. All of those are the things that have traditionally bothered this iteration of the Miami Dolphins specifically. So I look at this game and say it's going to be uphill sledding for a Miami Dolphins team that is uber talented, but already, dealing with, bumps and bruises for Devon Achane, who's a huge part of that rushing attack, and Raheem Mostert as well on a short week in a way that, to me, already invites a little doubt.
Yeah, Jalen Phillips questionable, Jalen Ramsey questionable, Achane, Mostert questionable, and now they're going to play, but it is off of a short week. One thing neither of these teams did well was run the ball. But when we talked about the loaded backfield of Achane and Mostert for Miami, even though they are a passing team, Achane averaged 2.4 a carry and Mostert 1.5 yards a carry. But for Buffalo, James Cook averaged under 4 yards as well, 3.7. It was the quarterback in Josh Allen, who averaged over 4 yards a carry, who rushed for 2 touchdowns, who threw for 2 touchdowns. It seems you changed the players, and there was a lot of change on Buffalo's team this year. But it comes down to the same thing: Josh Allen. Keon Coleman was the leading receiver in this game for Buffalo, and the weapons that Miami has. And you talk about it's the second game of the season. You talk about who the game's more important for. The game, because this happens. When I played, we had a team's number. We'd have the Giants' number, but Washington would have our number. And it's like you were on the sideline, and even if things were going well, you'd be in your head, okay, what's going to go wrong? what's going to mess this up because we normally fall to this team. You know, that's kind of where Miami is with Buffalo is, okay, we're playing well, but boy, we have a bad record against them. It can get in your head until you get over the hump, until you get a win, until you play well and get a win. So that's why I think this game is more important for Miami at home as well. I called the last game of the season last year with Buffalo in Miami, which Buffalo won. So Miami is at home. They need a win. It's a division game, and a division home game is doubly important.
Couldn't agree more. They're returning a lot more of their team, too, in a way that says, hey, you should be more capable of getting off to a fast start than Buffalo, who's breaking in this whole new receiver core. To me, the key will be Miami deep passing against the Bills' new safety room. Taylor Rapp and DeMar Hamlin both back there now, replacing some veterans that have been around. And Tua Tagovailoa last week against split safety, which the Bills used split safety coverage at the highest rate, the third highest rate in the league last year, and one of the highest rates in the league in week 1. Tua Tagovailoa 13 of 16 for 177 yards. So capable of getting after it in the place and part of the Bills defense that is certainly the weakest. We will wait and see what that looks like as we get ready for that game tomorrow. Coming up next, though, we'll take a look at the AFC North and try and solve their problems diplomatically. Next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. In Pittsburgh, Russell Wilson still dealing with that pesky calf injury. Senior, a soft tissue injury. God, they strike again. So how are the Steelers preparing this week without Wilson? Here's Mike Tomlin yesterday.
You know, when we get to those points, that's when we'll ponder his inclusion or not. And when that happens will probably be a component of that equation. But as I sit here today, we're preparing as if Justin is going to be our quarterback. I think that's the appropriate way to do it. Speculation is a waste of time. Russell's hurt. He's not available to us. And so, as you guys know, as a general practice, man, I focus my energy on those that are available and their readiness.
Okay, so in honor of the election process, let's embrace debate right now. I have some questions about the AFC North. I know you guys have some answers. So if elected head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, how would you handle the quarterback situation?
Dad, I will cede the floor to you as the elder statesman on this one. You can have the first crack at it. I will wait for my chance for rebuttal.
I would have started Justin Fields in the beginning of the season, but I think that was, they said it was a competition, but it was really, really kind of leaning toward Russell Wilson to be the starter, and he was named the starter, but he does have the soft tissue injury. So I thought Justin Fields should have been the starter. I think he gives that offense a better chance. He's not as good a passer as Russell Wilson, but not as worse to not offset it with the ability to run. So I think that is the key that he can move. So I would keep going with Justin Fields. Now the old question comes back, because this was going to be the revenge game. Russell Wilson going back and playing Denver, his old team. Is, do you lose your job with injury when Russell Wilson is healthy? Should he get his job back? That kind of has been put to the wayside as far as getting your job back. Now, from a player standpoint, we always think if you're the starter and he was named the starter and you get hurt, when you're healthy, you should get your job back. But a lot will be determined by how many games does he miss and how well is the starter playing when you only have 17 games.
My opponent's doing a lot of dancing around the issue here, so I will say this straightforward and frankly to you guys here. Mike Tomlin should do whatever is necessary for this team to win on a given week. And if that is Justin Fields one week, then fantastic. Great. Justin Fields, a capable passer outside the numbers, where right now Arthur Smith and this Steelers offense want to live. George Pickens this last game, 6 of his 7 targets for 85 yards against the Falcons in week 1 came outside of the numbers. Last season, Pickett's had 59% of his targets come outside the numbers, 3rd highest among receivers with a minimum 100 targets. So he fits what they want to do offensively. He's got that mobility, but Dad, if at some point he becomes an option that no longer serves them, neither of these quarterbacks is paid enough to me to be catered to by the coach. He should go with whatever gives him the best chance that week. And if there is a week where Russell Wilson is healthy, available, and Justin Fields isn't playing well, then by all means go for it.
You talk about me dancing around the situation. You didn't even give an answer. Your answer was, do whatever you got to do to win. Well, no kidding. No kidding. I was definitive. I said I would have started Justin Fields in the beginning of the year, and he should be the starter now. I didn't dance around anything. You, the one, my friend.
Oh, you did.
Were doing
you
some wedding
waffled back
dancing
and forth.
there.
See, this is what he wants to do, America. He wants you to believe that he was out here being definitive, when in actuality he tiptoed up to the line here. This country needs someone that's willing to act and act decisively. And I think by offering to play 2 quarterbacks over the course of the season, I am doing just that, Jesse.
Okay, let's move on to the Bengals. We don't have time for each of you to respond to everything the other one says. After a poor performance in week 1, critics have cited the Bengals offense being mid as one of their issues. So, do you agree the offense is mid? And if so, what can you do to improve throughout the season?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take this one, Dad, since I know you want to ease into this as best you can, and just say, has anyone looked at the Bengals' record in the first 2 games of the season since Joe Burrow came over? Because I have. I've done that work for you, America, and I'm here to remind you that in the last 9 games, so Joe Burrow is going into his 10th game in weeks 1 or 2 since he came into the league. He has won once in 9 tries. And we have seen Joe Burrow deal with matters of illness, matters of injury, and this season dealing with the loss of his star wide receiver Jamar Chase during the preseason as he goes back and forth onto the field in a contract dispute for the team. This team has never been built for fast starts. And so I understand, yes, the offense has always been a little bit scaled down, has always been catered to what Joe Burrow wants, which is to be in shotgun, to see his targets plainly, and to deliver the ball as he sees accordingly. A lot more akin to what you see from a guy like Aaron Rodgers or a guy like Dak Prescott than what you'll see out of the Shanahan-McVay tree guys, but it works for them late because you've got the quarterback to do it. And so unless we find out that Joe Burrow coming off this wrist injury is all of a sudden not the man that we've been used to since he burst onto the scene in the 2019 team with LSU, I would say, hey, business as usual for the Cincinnati Bengals until further notice.
Yeah, I actually would agree. I mean, you giving out the stat that you stole from me that I was going to give, and that's why you wanted to go first, of them just being 1-10 under Zach Taylor.
See, you see these accusations. This is what he does when he understands he's drowning. He lashes out here, America. Is this really what you want from the coach of your team? I don't know.
Seems like we're getting some bipartisan support here, some agreement between the two of you.
But before that, well, there is agreement but there is a disagreement, and he stole my stat. What I will say is you think of Cincinnati as a passing team. No T. Higgins in this game. He's questionable again. This was a 13-7. This was a one-score game going into the fourth quarter and a one-score low game going into the fourth quarter. I think Cincinnati gave up on the run too early. They ran the ball 16 times. They averaged almost 4.5 yards a carry. They lost Joe Mixon in free agency. Zach Moss averaged just under 5 yards a carry, but they ran it 16 times and passed it 29 times. Now, they had like 16 or 18 less plays than New England, but this was a close game where you could have run the ball to control a little more and help you get into scoring position. So you kind of have to look at, going back to the beginning here in that stat, you kind of got to look at Zach Taylor, how this team is prepared in the beginning of seasons and starting out this slow.
No Brian Callahan this year either as the offensive coordinator, so we'll wait to see if that does have an effect on this, even though we know, hey, Zach Taylor certainly comes over, cutting his teeth on that side of the ball, the effect there. We'll wait and see behind the scenes. I'm sorry, Jesse, I just had to get that point in right now as my opponent continues to baselessly slander me in front of everyone watching this debate right now. It's sad.
We haven't shut off your microphone yet. Okay, Ravens are coming off a tough loss to the Chiefs. Isaiah Likely was the source of much offense in week 1. And while head coach John Harbaugh says the plan is not to use Derrick Henry 30 times a game, is that the right call for this team? Either of you?
Oh,
press the button.
I think it's the right call. I think it's the right call for the team to not have them go 30 times a game. You can maybe, because with the ball in Lamar Jackson's hand, that's what's going to rev this offense. But he carried it 13 times. I would hope for a little bit more than that, because I don't think you can sustain 16 runs for Lamar. And now they weren't all planned runs. He scrambled quite a bit to his runs, but he had 16 carries and Derrick Henry had 13 carries. You can't sustain Lamar Jackson with 16 carries a game. At least I don't think. So I think Derrick Henry, who 4 of the last 5 years, even though he is hitting that 30-year-old mark, 4 of the last 5 years, he's had the most touches by running backs in the league. Dude can handle it. So while I agree, not 30 times a game, because Lamar's going to get his runs, and you obviously got a passing game as well. I think it needs to be more than 13 times a game.
The thing that John Harbaugh was missing from his statement was, we didn't bring him to be here, the guy that gets the ball 30 times a game right now. When you need to give him the ball 30 times a game is in January and February, when you spit the bit on running the ball last year. That is what the Ravens brought him here to do. At the beginning of the season, yes, if you want to use him and Lamar Jackson as training wheels for an offensive line that's learning how to operate in its new form, then by all means, yes, that can be the two-headed monster. You've got a receiving room full of weapons led by Zay Flowers. You've got a tight end room where Isaiah Likely is an emerging star right now. But at the end of the day, this has to get back to being a team that, like last year, was the best rushing attack in football, in no small part because of what your quarterback offers. But you need a running back that is the obvious hammer for those obvious situations. Because as we have seen in recent years, the passing league that we were sold was a lie. This league is still built on one thing, and that is running and stopping the run, especially when you get to the postseason. And last year we saw that inability or lack of willingness to do so ultimately damned the Baltimore Ravens when it mattered the most. And I believe this year, John Harbaugh and company understand how to remedy that. And it's with a gigantic battering ram of a human being at running back named Derrick Henry, who will see that volume increase late in the season.
So, Jesse, do you see what he did? He just went on and on and on and on and on, and he agreed with my policy. He agreed with my policy. He just used a lot of words.
You said he should
words.
just get more than 13, somewhere in between that. I gave you a plan. What America wants is a plan. They want to see where we're going, and they want to understand why it's got to happen the way that it does. What my opponent seems to want to do here is just bluster on about the idea of a plan with nothing actually in mind as he gets ready to. He'll figure it out when he gets there, America, is what he wants to tell you. I don't believe that. I've got a plan for you now, Baltimore, that's going to help you not only in the here and now as you get going, but later on as we get toward the postseason, where I know you and I all believe you deserve to be again.
My answer was succinct. In a microwave society of listening and losing attention, people stop listening to you after 45 seconds because you're just blustering. You're just blustering.
Okay, let's move on before I cut your mics. Many experts have said that the AFC North could be the best division in the NFL this season. Experts. They went 1-3 in week 1. Browns and Bengals are underdogs in week 2. Instead of being the best, is the North actually the worst division?
Oh, I concede the floor to you, old man, for all your complaints.
Wow. Again, I mean, old man. I mean, do we need to go down that road?
Speaking of old man, speaking of old man, I just want it to be known that GoJo, you're actually too young to run for president, so your father would win by default. But continue, senior.
Yes.
Too young.
Yes.
Sorry, too young.
Can't we be bipartisan here? I mean, what's the deal? No, this is not the worst division. We just said Cincinnati gets off to a slow start. As long as Joe Burrow doesn't get hurt, I think they're going to be fine, though maybe not this week against Kansas City fine. Cleveland and Pittsburgh obviously got a nice win against Atlanta. The Ravens played Kansas City, so that was going to be a tough out anyway. The Cleveland is the messy team to me. Going in and getting blown out by Dallas, who I didn't think was going to be as good this year. But I do think that while maybe this division won't be the best, I do not think it will be the worst division by the time the season ends, because a lot of this has to do with Cincinnati and their slow start.
The worst division in football remains the NFC South. I feel comfortable in saying that after what we saw in week 1. The Atlanta Falcons could not get off the Brown. Their Kirk Cousins-led team could not make the offense happen in the ways that people anticipated. The Carolina Panthers looked like they could be in the running for the worst team in the NFL right now, drubbed by a Saints team that showed offense. But again, relative to competition, we're still not sure how good that they can be. Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers deserve some credit, but overall, I look at that division and say, top to bottom, if you were to put their strongest against the strongest from other division, there is no way they match up at this point in time.
Fair enough. That concludes our debate for the evening.
Who won, Jesse? Who won?
We'll have to put it to a vote. We'll have to put it to a vote because that is the American way. So we'll put up a poll on Twitter and we will vote.
We'll let democracy reign. That's fun. Honestly, you really do just have to make hand movements and sound very sure of yourself.
If you can't convince them, confuse them. That is also the American way.
It's something I lived by since the start of my broadcasting career. It's called BS with conviction. BS with conviction. Act like you know exactly what you're talking about. And people will be like, oh, yeah, he's right. Even though sometimes I have no idea what I'm saying.
True
Who
can
are
be said,
you people?
True can be said probably for our politicians. So,
More often than not, sadly. Coming up next, though, we'll see if the same can be said for the commissioner of one league who drew the ire of a lot of her constituency. Next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Yesterday, WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert appeared on CNBC's Power Lunch, and she was asked about the Caitlin Clark-Angel Reese rivalry, all it stirred up, and her answer, it was less than ideal.
We do sit at this intersection of culture and sport and fashion and music. Like, the WNBA players are really looked at now as kind of cultural icons.
True.
And when you have that, you have a lot of attention on you. There's no more apathy. Everybody cares. It is a little that Bird Magic moment, if you recall, from 1979 when those two rookies came in from a big college rivalry, one white, one black. And so we have that moment with these two. But the one thing I know about sports, you need rivalry. That's what makes people watch. They want to watch games of consequence between rivals. They don't want everybody being nice to one another. So the social media is different today than it was in 1979 when it didn't exist. But, you know, I always tell the players, you know, I was told a long time ago, if someone's typing something in and you wouldn't ask their advice, ignore it. So it's a balance.
Okay, so, I mean, it is a great rivalry. We love to see it. We love to see the basketball rivalry, but it seems like she had an opportunity to address some of the, like, racist things that we've seen online, and she kind of just brushed that under the rug.
And she did respond later on Twitter, Dad, apparently seeing, feeling, and hearing the backlash from other players who were asked about this. A lot of members of the Las Vegas Aces weighed in on this, Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, and prompted Kathy Engelbert to tweet, during a recent media interview, I was asked about the dark side of social media and online conversation about WNBA rivalries and race. To be clear, there is absolutely no place for hate or racism of any kind in the WNBA or anywhere else. Dad, my question is, where was that during the interview? Because that question, and we didn't hear it on the in this clip, but the way it was phrased was tailor-made. It was a layup for this kind of response. And I think especially in a league, Dad, like, part of leadership is knowing who you're leading. I think that's always an important thing to consider. You are leading a league that is predominantly women of color, black and brown women, women who fall all over in terms of the LGBTQ plus side of things. And to know that you've got women represented in those areas in your league, and then you come out when offered this softball opportunity to go here and condemn it. It's not saying you have an answer of how to stop it, even though that was the question of, hey, how do you get out in front of that? How do you go and find a way to get and combat this? You might not even have an answer because the answer is difficult, trying to corral the internet mob. Yeah. But to at the very least come out and condemn it seemed so easy that I'm amazed that someone who is as capable and who has done as much at the helm of this league as Kathy Engelbert had missed that mark.
Yeah, I mean, she should have started with that, with the tweet she later put out. She should have started her answer with that, you know, and said, let's, you know, about racism and all that went along with it. And if she starts with that and then goes to on the court rivalries, because it kind of got lost in translation of what she was talking about, quite honestly. And had she led with a definitive statement about racism, you know, that's not what she was talking about, the hate and the racism, that it was on the court rivalries that we were talking about. Because we all thought once it moves past what's going on in social media and gets to the basketball part, that it's going to be fine, because now we're talking about hoops. And it took a while. It took a while to get there. And she didn't help that. She kind of went back a little bit to, you know, offering about, you know, fashion and ball and social media and how these players are icons now. So you're going to get a lot of repercussions on social media about the players. And once it got to basketball, and I think we are in the basketball stage, it's a lot better talking about rivalries on the court. But yeah, she obviously missed the mark here.
Yeah, but that wasn't what she was asked about. And I think to have the only statement about the commentary on social media be, I've told our players, if you're typing something out to someone you wouldn't take advice from, don't read it. is not applicable in 2024, considering how much and how young the people you are leading are. The world they live in is online, for better or for worse. And believe me, a lot of days now, I think it's for worse, but it's reality. So you can either reject reality in favor of something you believe should happen, or you can understand the situation. Like, I feel like we should offer services as a PR firm for public relations, because PR firm for public relations, strike that. Yeah. Just simplify it to one. But I like, honestly, the frustrating part is the answer is so easy, where it's, yeah, obviously this rivalry is great for basketball, but rivalry shouldn't spill over into hate speech, especially directed on behalf of or in the name of one towards the other, when in actuality, there has been no malice actually between the two parties, as we've constantly pointed out with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. I know there are those in the W that believe Caitlin Clark could be doing more to put down some of what's done on her behalf in these spaces, as Caitlin strives to kind of protect what she's got going on in terms of all of the things going in her space noise-wise. But for Kathy Engelbert, you are the person in charge of all this, and so it's a lot easier for me to answer and say, yeah, you need to come out in defense of all of your players, and especially, again, in a league that is as full of players who are, black, brown, women of color, women who are, gay, straight, questioning, queer, all manner of women represented in this league. You got to come out a lot harder than that when given the opportunity, because again, your players notice. Like, that's the other part, is the women of the W will let you hear it. This is an outspoken group of women who have had to go and advocate for themselves for a long ass time. And so if they believe, especially, we know the player commissioner relationship can always be a little bit fraught. You invite comments like this where now all of a sudden the players get to question what you were doing.
Is we always talk about is any publicity good publicity, because the WNBA is at its highest level, right? Its highest level of money, revenue they're making, popularity, and all that goes with it. And part of it is people tune in to see some of the negative, some of the infighting that's going on. Now, from the league, it should not be. You should be addressing that. But
I think there's there's a difference between malice between the players and hate speech from fans and people who watch it. Like, that should not be the bad that comes with the good, and it might still come. There might not, again, be anything you can do to stop it. I'm not saying Kathy Engelbert can wave a magic wand and all of a sudden make people online act better in a way that's just not outside of the capabilities of most anyone. I'm not saying there's something actionable here, but at the very least, is the person who's the face of this. And again, one who I think's been a very capable face of this. Like, I don't want this to turn into or sound like some teardown of Kathy Engelbert, the person or the commissioner. I'm just saying, in this specific instance, this one's easy. People saying the racist and misogynistic things they have said online is a no-no. It's bad. It can't be tolerated and shouldn't be tolerated, even if what we see on the court, like, hey, yes, the drama, much like in the NBA, is part of the sell for these leagues. That part, totally fine and understandable. What she was asked about here, completely out of bounds.
Yeah, no, I agree. She obviously could have handled it differently, and that's why she came out with a tweet later on that talking about what she meant to say or what she should have said.
Certainly there. So we'll wait and see now what more is said about this. We mentioned the Las Vegas Aces had a number of players who commented on this. And Jesse, they're getting ready to play a couple of big games coming up against Caitlin Clark this weekend as one of the many offerings we have on a wonderful sampler platter of sports events that you can watch this weekend. Yeah,
both tonight and Friday, we've got Clark hosting the defending champs. Hard to watch everything that's going on, so we're going to help you out with the GoJo and Golic watch guide. Okay, so we know it's mostly football, right? But a Caitlin Clark matchup against the Aces, you might have to tune in and watch that instead of the Arizona-Kansas State matchup on Friday night, maybe? I don't know. What else are you guys excited for this weekend? And kind of if you had to pick like one thing to watch in a certain time slot, what are you going to go with here?
Yeah, oh, by the way, the Aces and the Fever play today and this coming Friday. So you get a doubleheader of great basketball there as the Fever have been surging. We know the Aces trying to get back to defend their title once again. Dealt with Asia Wilson missing a game for the first time in quite some time, resting an ankle the other day. So, Dad, that's certainly on the menu there. But it is a weird weekend for college football. I remember seeing when it was announced that game day was going to be at LSU against South Carolina, initially going, that's pretty interesting. And then you look at the number that South Carolina just did on Kentucky. Obviously, LSU fresh off doing monster numbers opening weekend against USC in a game they ultimately lost there. And knowing the environment that exists in Columbia around that, going to be a pretty electric one there. So I know plenty of people will be tuned into that. But Arizona, Kansas on Friday night, not a bad place to start the weekend in a Big 12 that feels pretty wide open, especially now that Utah dealing with that injury to Cam Rising as, hey, not as bad as we've seen in the past and certainly not something he can't overcome, but all of a sudden for a quarterback that just missed an entire year due to injury makes you pull back a little bit and go, all right, maybe this conference more open than we gave it credit for.
Yeah, I definitely look at Arizona, Kansas State as one of the games I'm definitely watching on Friday night. With Arizona and Utah being the two teams that coming in that are vying for that for that top spot. I think this could go a long way in determining that. I'm also looking forward, quite honestly, on Saturday to Texas A&M at Florida. Just because you have the true freshman quarterback, DJ Lagway. I mean, this kid has thrown, I mean, just an incredible game he had in 21 of 21. Well, for the season, he's 21 of 31. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception for over 400 yards. He had a monster second game. And the true freshman, a big kid, like 230, 240. So I'm kind of excited to see, all the talk of is Dylan Raiola, Nebraska 2-0, true freshman. But this kid's a true freshman, and this kid can whip the ball around pretty well.
I mean, big, strong, physical freak. I know that Billy Napier has said, hey, when Graham Mertz will go back and use both of them in certain spots, that Graham Mertz is by no means done for them. But, man, it's hard to look away from all the talent under the hood there. And if you're Billy Napier, I mean, listen, this season, it feels like he's coaching for his job. And what would give the brass there more reason to keep him around than seeing the promise in a true freshman that you've recruited, that you've brought in here, that you certainly don't want to lose if he continues to play really well. So that one's going to be interesting in the stress test way, Dad, as is you look at Memphis at Florida State. Like you get Mike Norvell's alma mater coming in here in a place that he knows, not alma mater, but a place that he coached prior to this, coming into Florida State off 2 wins against a Troy team that won the Sun Belt last year, certainly last week as a good win. Now coming into a battered Florida State team. Man, you better not let anything crazy here. I was there at Florida State when they lost 4 in a row to start the season in 2021, and remember how grim it felt then. But coming off what you did last year, if you're Florida State and you were to lose this particular matchup and go to 0-3 on the season, the sky would start falling if it hasn't already in Tallahassee.
Yeah. I'm also looking at BC at Missouri, 24 at number 6 is what kind of a test this is for BC. Missouri, one of the top teams in the country, but BC starting off 2-0. Castellanos has 6 touchdowns, no interceptions on the year, so I hadn't turned the ball over. They're running the ball well as well. I mean, this is that early test to say, okay, how for real is Boston College?
Yeah, who would have thought we'd
No
be
doubt.
here? We'd be here, Notre Dame with a loss, BC riding high here.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Not me. Not you guys.
Believe me, it pains me to no end, Jesse, but Bill O'Brien's got them boys playing some ball right now, and so I have to give credit where it is due. They have gone out there and shown the world in a way that Notre Dame needs to this weekend on the road against Purdue, which I should not be this nervous about this game, but here we are. Dad, speaking of nerves, by the way, and one that I think is really interesting now, we're going to be 3 weeks into the season here. Oregon's kind of show us something. On the road at Corvallis against Oregon State in a heated rivalry game. We get a bunch of these geographical ones this weekend. The Apple Cup earlier this year with Washington State at Washington, which obviously is great as we watched the dissolving of the Pac-12 last year for people still feel like they have something to hold on to in both of these matchups. Oregon State, we know, playing in that kind of structured agreement with the Mountain West this year along with Washington State. But this Oregon team through 2 games won a real slugfest against Idaho, and then got the Ashton Genty show coming into town last week that ran all over that defense. They've got to get 2 hands on the wheel here quickly, especially up front on both lines of scrimmage, to show us they're anywhere close to the team we thought they were capable of being this year.
A top 10 team, which is 2-0, that has dropped in both weeks of the rankings. They started off preseason number 3, sluggish in week 1, dropped to 7, and then win again, and they dropped to 9. So they're winning, but going the wrong way. So they do need a bit of a prove-it game.
It is wild to think about that, Dad. Texas now seems to be the team we thought Oregon was going to be. I think through the first few weeks of the season, that's become clear as they are the bona fide title contender. And Oregon's still got a lot to prove to us about what they're going to be this 2023 season, 2024 season.
All right, guys, week one, the dust has settled in the NFL, so let's take a look at the futures market on the DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, guys, Saquon Barkley, his odds to win NFL MVP went from plus 15,000 to plus 10,000 after his 3-touchdown performance on Friday. And the Patriots Super Bowl odds, still not good, but they went from plus 35,000 to plus 15,000. So improvement, I guess. Then Michael Penix Jr., odds to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, they went from plus 10,000 to plus 6,000 without him taking a single snap. The books are down on Kirk Cousins. And Saints NFC winner odds after their win over the Panthers, they moved from plus 4,500 to plus 3,500. Could we see them Super Bowl bound in their own stadium? Mon Dieu. Plus, Cooper Kupp, his odds to win Offensive Player of the Year moving from plus 6,000 to plus 1,700. That was your update on the futures market. In hour two, Jason Fitz joins the program.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Hour number 2 here as we roll along. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. Let's bring in our buddy Jason Fitz. It's Wednesday. We hope to have him around here more often. You can catch him hosting over at Yahoo Sports and on Fox Sports Radio on Saturday morning with the fellas. And Fitz, I'm proud to see you still repping your colors even after a week 1, which I had to imagine was a tough pill to swallow. You guys, the Raiders, go up against the Los Angeles Chargers team where it's Justin Herbert and against your guys' roster that's Death Star skill players and great guys around a quarterback and Gardner Minshew, who's, about the line of demarcation for league average. So do you not see this as like a dark harbinger of things to come for you guys? You're still positive?
Look, if one loss in week 1 was reason for me to put the colors away, like I would have stopped doing this years ago. Like I let out a big sigh Monday morning and said, here we go. It's just what happens. Like Monday, you try and stay away from the TV shows because if they talk about your favorite team, it's not going to be favorable. By Tuesday, you're getting to that spot where you're like, okay, maybe it wasn't that bad. By Wednesday, you're ready to move forward. By Thursday, it's on to Baltimore. Look, you're right. By the way, there are plenty of negatives from that Raiders game, but also the defense was inspired for the first half. I loved watching a team that was playing that hard. There are good things about it. It's just the offense is incompetent, Mike. So every week, I'm going to watch incompetent offense. And I'm going to sit there and want to drink, although I don't right now. I'm going to want to drink every time my favorite team has the football, which just feels icky.
Ooh, that's a good question. Is now that Jason Fitz has most notably been on a massive health kick right now.
Yes.
Looks great. He was telling us before he's almost 149 pounds. He's a skinny mini. But Jason, I knew you when you were a bigger boy, and you told me that your habit used to be on game days, you would drink 2 entire 2-liter bottles of diet soda while you watch the Raiders play. So I'm curious, what do you do now to cope with the stress during this game?
Yeah. So, and by the way, you left out the other part of that. A dozen double chocolate donuts every Raiders game has always been my tradition. Now I have a walking treadmill, Mike. And so I just walk on the treadmill while I drink water and I say things that I shouldn't say. Like that's what I'm doing. It's seltzer water, sometimes flavored seltzer water. I gave myself a little grace. I had a diet soda. I had 1 diet soda this year on Raiders game day. But yeah, walking treadmill is not as much fun as a dozen chocolate donuts.
So how much would the Raiders have to lose for you to go back to the 2 liters of Diet Coke and the chocolate donuts?
Ooh, good question. Do you feel personally responsible for them losing by changing up your habit? It's a great question.
Oh, God. Well, here's the thing. If they'd won the Super Bowl last year, I'd still be eating the donuts. Let's be real about that. The donuts were creating. See, this is a good question, Mike, but I'll tell you, for me, I will never forget last year with the Arizona loss when I couldn't figure out how the Raiders managed to blow the lead that they blew in the last couple of minutes of the game. And I remember the TV ended, and, if you're watching on Sunday Ticket, it just plays that music over and over and over again. And I just sat there and I watched the music play in silence for like an hour afterwards. It's a tough, close loss that will make me actually want to eat donuts. Like when the Ravens kick the snot out of the Raiders this weekend, I'm not going to be surprised, but it doesn't change the way I think the season's going to go. They're a 7-win team. They're still a 7-win team. If they lose by 40 to the Ravens, I'm fine. If they lose by 1 to the Chiefs, that's when I might end up at Duncan.
What if they lose to Carolina in week 3?
Oh, God. Okay, if they lose to Carolina in week 3, all bets are off. If Bryce Young comes out and suddenly looks like C.J. Stroud against this defense, all bets are off. And look, that might be the day that takes me back to the bottle too. I should stress, I'm only not drinking for health reasons, so it's not like I have a problem. Don't get my menchies. Just for health reasons. But yeah, the thing that might make me go downstairs and bust open one of the collector's bottles of Woodson whiskey might be the moment if they lose to Carolina. That's it. Mike will be getting late night texts from me that are all just slurs, and he won't know. It's just there's not even a word there. He can't figure it out. That means that I finally lost the war.
All right, so we know what the breaking point will be there with you. I actually want to ask you about the other team that you saw in week 1, because while I'd love to sit here all day and talk about the fact that Joe Alt locked up Max Crosby in this game in his first rattle out of the box as a tackle and looked really good for the Chargers, Justin Herbert was going to be more of the focus, a little banged up with the plantar fascia during the preseason, and certainly a receiver core full of new faces. So as you watched him go up against a Raiders defense that has great parts on it, that to your point played with great energy, what did you see from him in the first game of an important season coming off his new deal?
I think what's important here is that the Raiders sent the farm repeatedly. If you go back and watch that, they did a nice job of disguising it, but they sent stuff everywhere. And the stunning part to me is that the wide receivers weren't ready for it. Herbert was capable of getting the ball out, but the receivers were not in the right place at the right time. I don't know that you can always win that way, but I think that is the blueprint. If you really want to disrupt this Chargers offense, yeah, you got to do a better job stopping the run. The Raiders gave up a couple of huge runs late in the second half that really skewed some of those numbers. But from Herbert particularly, he was ready to get rid of the ball. His young guys around him weren't ready to get the ball. So they've got to get that cleaned up in this offense. Otherwise, every team every week is just going to continue to send it felt like Engage 8 in Madden. They were just sending everybody every play, and it worked. It disrupted that offense. They had 1 first down in the first half. I mean, my God, that offense was so out of sync because the Raiders were sending the farm every single play.
Who surprised you to the good in week 1?
I mean, New England is the easy answer. I don't know if it was particularly good, but I think let me say this. Somebody that I think the demise has been overstated, and he showed everybody why. Josh Allen. Like, I know Josh Allen being great is not a big take, but I'll go back to the draft. I was doing the draft show with Yahoo, and Damian Harris was on our broadcast. And as we were in our production meeting, Damian Harris played with Josh and the Bills. In our production meeting for the draft, we all said, look, Bills are going to take a wide receiver in the first round. And he came in with a not so fast. And I realized eventually they did. But Damian's point was internally within the organization, they believe that Josh Allen, no matter who is around him, will account for 40 touchdowns a year. And they don't care how they come. They just believe that that is his number. They don't think he needs receivers around him. They don't think he needs special around him. He's worth 40. And that was in my mind as we watched him get 4 touchdowns in this game where they were getting their butts kicked early. And frankly, it didn't matter. Like, Josh Allen was the calming presence, and he reminded us that he really is him, right? Like, he's Superman in this process. 4 touchdowns week 1. All I kept thinking is, for all of these people that are saying the Bills are going to be terrible, I don't see it. Like, they still have an MVP caliber quarterback. They're still going to win a bunch of football games. I came into the season picking them for the East. I still pick them for the East.
I do think it's fascinating, Jason, and I always take my cues from the guys that have played with these guys recently, been inside these locker rooms, and I thought it was particularly of note. Like, you remember when Tyreek Hill came over from Kansas City to Miami, and the first thing he did was pump up to his tires, say he's the most accurate quarterback I've ever played with after coming from Patrick Mahomes. Jordan Poyer joined the Dolphins this offseason from the Buffalo Bills, and in May, when he got there, still said Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the league. Like, the guy that was in the foxhole with them and now plays for a division rival that, oh, by the way, he's going to play him tomorrow night, said that that's the best quarterback in the league. So, Dad, the guys that have been around and seen it up close and personal kind of see what most of us who are still supporting the Bills have said is, hey, this is a guy that has grown into being one of those super weapon quarterbacks in the league and can now sustain this offense almost by himself.
Yeah, he can, but at what cost? Game 1 hurt the off throwing hand. I mean, he's asked to do a lot, just like Lamar Jackson, though I think Lamar has gotten more help, especially with Derrick Henry. As I said, Lamar can't sustain 16 runs a game. Josh Allen, and he runs different. Josh Allen takes hits where Lamar doesn't take as many hits. So while I will certainly give Buffalo the benefit of the doubt, I just wonder, Jason, how long Josh Allen can sustain throwing 2 touchdowns, running for 2 touchdowns, carrying that entire offense on his shoulders.
No, it's a fair point. He's built different, and I think that's part of it. But you mentioned Lamar. I mean, to look at the Ravens for a second, I was stunned. 16 rushes for Lamar, 13 for Derrick Henry. I really thought that Derrick Henry was going to come out and be the statement portion of this offense. And I said before week 1 that I thought the Ravens would end up with the toughest offense in the AFC to shut down by the end of the year. And instead, we all watched the Chiefs and we're reminded that Kansas City, when they have speed, looks even more dangerous. And the Ravens don't look like they've necessarily figured out that flow yet. So I was a little surprised that Baltimore's offense didn't show us more variance. Like that, they should be able at this point to run the football. They should be able to beat you mid-level routes. And they should be able, Zay Flowers should be able to explore more depth. I really thought there'd be more there. But as Mike Golic Jr. will always remind us, you still got to have the fat guys up front to sustain that. And they certainly didn't week 1. So I was wrong about Baltimore.
Yeah, I think Baltimore is going to take a while to grow into this. Said earlier, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are going to have to kind of be the training wheels for this offense for a little bit. And we saw that definitely on Lamar Jackson's case in week 1, night 1 against that Kansas City team. Jason, we talked before, Jesse mentioned in the last segment we had, the offensive rookie of the year odds, Michael Penix Jr.'s jumped and skyrocketed as he's the only car that didn't drive off the lot so far this season and thus hasn't depreciated like the rest of the rookie quarterbacks in his class going out driving around around, getting into fender benders. For the guys that we did see this weekend from the rookie class, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, are you looking at this as blip on the radar, understandable, rookies in their first outing, or is there anything you're actually concerned about with this group based on what you saw in their first sample size?
I think this is a little bit of a reminder to all of us that whatever we see in the preseason doesn't matter, because we were sitting here trying to anoint Bo Nix, right, as the second coming based on preseason performance against vanilla defenses. Like, what are we doing here? You know, and then you look, I think the most surprising of those three that you mentioned is that Caleb struggled so much. But I also do think we need to acknowledge the Titans, a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, a new first-time defensive coordinator. For all of the situations for a rookie quarterback to come into for his first game, he went into one that was the hardest to predict. You have no idea what it's actually going to look like. You have no idea what they're actually going to call, and you're going to have to coach on the fly. So I have a little bit of grace and forgiveness for Caleb Williams, but I also think it's funny that, you know, Brian Callahan, the head coach of the Titans, afterwards acknowledged that maybe if they just punted on every first down, they would have won the football game. Like, that's how bad that Bears offense was. And we had great expectations. So I do think, while it's just a blip, I believe Caleb Williams is a superstar. I did sit there and watch that game and say, what the hell are we watching right now? Why is it so disjointed? He does have weapons around him. There does need to be some play calling acknowledgement of how do you get the best out of him. I would remind everybody, it took a couple of weeks to figure out how to get the best out of CJ Stroud too, though. Like, we remember the end of CJ Stroud's rookie year, not the first week.
Well, I mean, we went over, go over it yesterday. CJ Stroud had over 300 yards passing in each of his first two games. So he was, I mean, they lost those games, which they lost the first game for sure. I think they lost the second game too, but he might just also be an outlier. Like, I think we might be seeing more and more that comparing yourself to CJ Stroud might be the thief of joy for any of these young quarterbacks.
They did. You're right. And I should give acknowledgement to that. They did alter their play calling about a month into the season with a lot. The play action splits changed a lot. I think they sort of looked at it and said, how do we make him more successful? I think that was a smart strategy, but you are right. Like, I also think that it wouldn't be unhealthy for the entire league and for every media person to just put CJ Stroud on a pedestal and say, y'all, like, that's over there. Now let's look at how the rest do it.
He is by far the exception than the rule of rookie quarterbacks. And quite honestly, Jaden Daniels played by far the best. 17 of 24 for $184, no turnovers, but no touchdowns. Ran average over 5.5 yards on 16 carries. And they played the Giants this week, so he has a chance to pad those. Quite honestly, the best-looking rookie offensive player was Malik Neighbors for the Giants when we talk about the top quarterbacks and the top receivers. All right, Jason, want to switch over to college and let you kind of, you know, pat yourself on the back for picking that Texas. Now, I did as well. I said double digits. You said in the 20s. But boy, oh boy, Texas put it on Michigan, which to me and you certainly was not surprising.
I picked Texas too. Why are you alienating me out of this? I said Texas would win and cover.
You didn't pick them by a lot, though. Not as much as Jason and I did.
I said Texas by 20. And my Instagram notifications were on last week, which was a mistake. So when you all posted that, I got ping, 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 ping. Well, you know what? I never do this. I did this Saturday when they were up by, you know, they win by 19. I said 20. I went out and there was one person that was like, this guy shouldn't even have a job anymore. So I found that comment, went back, it's like, hey, just curious, can I keep my job now? Like, I went in there. I went after the comments on this one because, look, I thought it was a tremendous effort by Texas. But most importantly, this really blew my mind. Quinn Ewers has become special. And I think we have to look at what Quinn Ewers looked like last year, Quinn Ewers looked like this year. Not only is he climbing the pocket, which is a beautiful thing to see, but he climbs the pocket, he rotates his hips, he gets his balance back, and he flings the ball off schedule with his arm in a way that he did not do a year ago. Like, the work that Sark has done with Quinn Ewers and the swagger that he has while he's doing it just hits different. Like, I've spent a long time since the NFL draft saying this year's draft class doesn't look particularly great. And the counter to that is, well, a year ago we said the same thing about Jaden Daniels, right? Quinn Ewers looks to me like that guy that has taken such a meteoric leap. I didn't see it coming. And Texas looks incredible. They don't look good. They look incredible. Sure, Texas is back. We're tired of saying that. Maybe it all falls apart. But my God, I absolutely loved it, Mike.
Yeah, I do think he has jumped off the page in a way that even exceeds what we saw last year in a great offensive season for them, doing it as the driving force behind an offense that's got entirely new weapons now. So there is no doubt it is back as hell in Texas right now. The horns are most certainly up at a time where everyone was looking forward to spiking them down. At Jason Fitz is where you can yell at him more on social media. I saw you arguing in the mentions there. Jason, we always appreciate the time, man. Thank you.
Thanks, boys and girls.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Guys, Christian McCaffrey sat out in the 49ers Week 1 win. Kyle Shanahan says if it was a playoff game, he would have been on the field, so maybe that bodes well for Week 2. Regardless of the drama around when Jordan Mason knew that he was going to start, the 49ers did survive, without McCaffrey against the Jets. Likely not going to miss him again against Minnesota this week. 6-point favorites on the road against the Vikings. We know the soft tissue injuries are the worst, according to Dr. Golic, so we got to keep an eye on that soft tissue injury. McCaffrey injury, Jordan Love also injured. Massive for the 49ers and Packers. Not good. Packers could be in trouble if they can't steal a couple wins with Malik Willis here looking at their season. But what about some of the other injuries that happened during Week 1, you guys? Which ones are going to have the biggest effect on the season other than those two guys? What do you think?
Well, I do want to stick on Jordan Love for a minute because Malik Willis coming in. This is where the backup needs to come through. And that's what a guy like Cooper Rush has been able to do. When Dak missed 5 games, Cooper Rush was 4-1. The backup's job is to keep the team's head above water until the starter gets back. And that's what Malik Willis's job is. They play the Colts, they play the Titans, they play the Vikings, they play the Rams in the next 4. We'll see how many games Jordan Love misses. But to get into an early hole, there's only one division game, and that's with the Vikings in there. So that to me is something to keep an eye on of if you're not winning, how much of a hole that you're in by the time your starter comes back.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about the lack of a ton of division games in that stretch is huge because I don't know what we've seen from Malik Willis at this point that would inspire us with a ton of confidence in his ability. The end of that game, certainly an unenviable position, getting sacked on that final play of the game instead of getting a pass off. Like all of that, I can write off a little bit more just because as someone who was a backup a lot of my career, coming into games at the end, man, it can feel like a fire drill standing in the middle of the highway watching all the cars go around you. But even during his time in Tennessee, we just did not see the growth from him as a player. And now he's got, Matt LaFleur as a play caller who's one of the best in the league. He's got an offense that's full of a variety of different kinds of weapons that can help him. All these things that could make the situation better than the one he left. But, Dad, they're really going to get a test. Like, for Matt LaFleur, if this Packers team survives this and goes on the run that they could, this is his coach of the year resume highlight tape type stretch that he would be able to put out there and say, hey, if we get through this where, we mentioned the Titans team that they're going to face in a couple of weeks obviously weren't world beaters in week one, gave a game away against Chicago. This Colts team, I think, is going to kind of ride a similar roller coaster with Anthony Richardson through a lot of the early portion of this season. So winnable games there, no doubt. So that one, Dad, I think at the top of the heap because it is one of the star quarterbacks of the league. It's a team that people expected to be able to challenge in the NFC North, the Detroit Lions. But outside of that, Dad, if we're looking at other injuries that I think really create a ripple effect, it's hard to look past one from your game and Steve Avila, the offensive lineman for the Los Angeles Rams, one of their versatile pieces, a guy who could play center and guard in there, and is part of a litany of players on that offensive line that just couldn't afford to lose any more dudes already walking in with a lack of depth on the perimeter at tackle. Now losing that interior was the strength of that line. And if you're looking for Matthew Stafford, who's not one of the most mobile quarterbacks who took a beating in game one, that really spells doom for a team that I had really high hopes for this season.
Yeah, you have the right tackle, and Havestein he's kind of week to week as well. Larrick Jackson, the left tackle, still has to serve one more game in his suspension, but Avila is definitely a big miss in the middle of that offensive line. They signed a center from the practice squad of the Eagles to the Rams to try and fill the need until Avila is good. He's going to miss some time. MCL. Let me tell you, the MCL is one of the more painful injuries out there. Not going to require surgery, but he'll be out a few weeks. And also, Puka Nacua.
And Dad, you mentioned with him, though, worth noting on the pain front, you were the one that mentioned they had to pull him off the field physically from going back in there during the game. So if it's a pain tolerance issue, he does seem like a guy that's uniquely suited for this.
I can't stress enough doing that game. The PR department not only sent it to us, but sent it to the NBC, to Tirico and Collinsworth. They sent out that Steve Avila is out of the game. Out. We came back with that from break. And I looked on the field and I said, Avila is on the field. So we have a lack of communication, but what we had was a rogue player saying, I'm not out. And literally before they would run the play, before they came back from break, they sent in Bo Limmer, the rookie, and Avila went off. And again, he did not go to the bench. He started working with another O-lineman on pass drops. And he didn't look like he was moving that badly, but it had to hurt like hell. And then finally, the next time you saw him, he was sitting at the end of the bench, tape off his hands, slumped down like he just lost his puppy. Like, I can't believe they won't let me play. And this is one of the more painful injuries. It's not shocking, especially with old linemen. They're about as tough as nails and do not come off the field. So that was amazing. But Puka Nacua, he's going to miss multiple weeks with a sprained PCL. Now, they have Cooper Kupp, who had 21 targets and 14 receptions. They have other weapons. Tyler Higbee, the tight end, is out, though. He was on the PUP list as well. So it certainly hurts not having Puka Nacua. So that they have a couple of injuries they have to deal with, as well as lingering injuries from other players.
I think the worst part about the Puka Nacua injury, you and I, we got to visit with him at the Super Bowl when he came and joined us on the show. You want to talk about a guy who just brings so much joy to the game and the juice that he brought to a set during Super Bowl week. I can only imagine what he's like in a huddle. We're all in net negative there. It has been wild, though, to watch. I saw someone tweet out the Next Gen Stats route tree that Cooper Kupp ran during the game and said, yeah, Cooper Kupp playing the Puka Nacua role. And I don't know if they were being jokey or not, but it's like, he was the original. It was him. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua happened because Cooper Kupp was injured and coming back from that. Lest we not forget what this man has meant to that offense, and especially doing it at a time where he was more of the singular force. Back then, it was him. It was Robert Woods during the Super Bowl year. Odell Beckham Jr. came over and played a big role, but this guy's not new to this. He's true to this, and he's healthy this year. And him and Matthew Stafford are essentially going to have to carry that offense with Kyron Williams by themselves.
It's stunning in calling that game and knowing they're going to go to Cooper Kupp. I kept saying it on the air. They're going to throw to him. He's running out route. He's running a slant. He's running a curl. He's running, not crazy route. He's in motion every single pre-snap. He's in motion, and he just gets the ball, and the ball is coming to him. Yes, you're right. He's the original. Let nobody forget, in 2021, he had 145 receptions, over 1,900 receiving yards, and 16 touchdowns. He is, yes, the original. He is not taking the place of Puka Nacua. He was what Puka Nacua was. He was better than that. Puka had 105 receptions. He had 145. So, he's going to get the lion's share, no doubt, and everybody's going to know it, and yet he'll still get it. Another player to me, Mike, is the one of the three teams that lost in the AFC North. David Njoku hurt his ankle, and he's week to week. This is a tough one because you look at Deshaun Watson is struggling at the quarterback position. The leading receiver was the running back, Jerome Ford, and then it was Njoku, and then it was another tight end, Jordan Atkins. So before you got to Jerry Jeudy, who actually had the same amount as Atkins, 3 receptions, but you had a wide receiver or a running back and 2 tight ends as your leading receivers. So, and Njoku had a monster year last year with the 25 different quarterbacks Cleveland ended up with Flacco toward the end of the season. So that is going to be an injury that hurts Cleveland.
Yeah, for an offense that desperately needs help because their quarterback doesn't appear to be in a position to certainly lift them beyond their means. And again, this is just talking about Deshaun Watson in purely the football sense right now. But Dad, the AFC North injury, I was actually kind of looking at going into this week, considering we talked about that Bengals-Chiefs matchup. T. Higgins, I saw Adam Schefter went on McAfee the other day and said with that hamstring, he's not likely to play against the Kansas City Chiefs this weekend. And I saw this stat from Nate Tice that I thought was interesting and telling as it concerns to the Cincinnati offense that's taking a beating publicly right now. I saw Orlovsky talking about them the other day, how vanilla they are, how much they don't do around their quarterback. Nate Tice tweeted this out. The Patriots defense recognized Bengals plays quickly and shut the door on them. The Patriots had the lowest average tackle distance and missed tackle rate during week 1 in the NFL, according to Next Gen Stats. That meant, Dad, that, hey, it was pretty easy for them to see where it's coming. And that's twofold. One, Patriots defense as advertised, right? That is blue chip stock coming off the Belichick era. And now under Gerard Mayo, it seems like they've continued a lot of that with the talent there. But the other part of it is we know this Bengals offense is not overly complicated in what they present to defense. They rely on their players to go out and be great. And if you're an offense where Jamar Chase is still coming off a preseason where he was intermittently available because of the contract stuff, and you've got potentially 1 year left of T. Higgins who's playing on the franchise tag, you need dudes out there to make this thing work, especially as Joe Burrow gets off to the usual slow start that we see for this offense. So losing him and knowing, and Dad, I'll give it to you on this one, a soft tissue injury, especially a hamstring for a guy like T. Higgins, is huge to monitor this season because that only gets better with time he doesn't have.
Oh, I mean, you start to talk about running backs or receivers. You're like a Ferrari with a screw loose, just a little screw loose that just knocks them off their game. And that's what T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and all the great wide receivers are. You get a little nagging injury, and it just can keep them out. Now, they're playing Kansas City this week, another very, very tough defense. And as we've mentioned multiple times, under Zach Taylor, they've gotten off to a 1-10 start in the first 2 weeks of the game. That again, points, obviously at the players. You're the ones on the field not getting it done, but that's also points at the coach of not having this team prepared to start the first couple weeks of the season. I mean, it's ridiculously obvious.
It is. So that part they've all got to wear, and I think it's very concerning early on if that doesn't get better for a team that we expected to just plop Joe Burrow back in and immediately be one of those teams that went from out of the playoffs to in the playoffs in one of the toughest divisions in football. Dad, I want to give you one on the total opposite end of the spectrum, though, as the arrow continues to point down for the Carolina Panthers. Brutal news. Likely season-ending meniscus tear for Derek Brown, their star defensive tackle, who really, Dad, was like one of the few bright spots left on a defense that let almost everybody leave this offseason between what you had on the edge in Brian Burns, Frankie Louvu at linebacker, and the secondary they lost parts. Like, this was a defense that was the only bright spot of this team last year. They cut off the defense to go out and sign a bunch of parts around Bryce Young on offense, and the return after 1 week on that, deeply concerning. And now it starts to look at, Dad, you almost wonder for the Panthers as this happens for Derek Brown. And God, you hope the best that he can recover all the way and come back because he's an exceptional player and one of their homegrown talents. You almost look for the Panthers and wonder if, hey, this all just sort of leads you to where this might eventually be going anyway, and it's that race for the number one pick. Like, we talked about that game between them and the Giants in Germany the other day. That could very well be the kind of Texans-Bears matchup we saw for the number one pick the other year.
Completely agree. I think it's absolutely going to be between Carolina and the Giants. And they did try and help Bryce Young on offense, and that didn't help at all. And they just, the defense outside of Derek Brown was just left in tatters with Brian Burns going to the Giants. So Brian Burns will face his old team when those two teams match up. But yeah, it's not looking good. And we know that owner has a short fuse and short patience, and David Tepper. So another bad year and another first-round pick. God knows what he's going to do.
Yeah, this one, though, I think would be understandable in some ways. Yeah. Bryce Young, it was so abysmal last year, and if there's not real substantial improvement this season, especially what we talked about with Jason in the last segment, hey, you're going to start to see quarterbacks like Quinn Ewers, some of these guys that weren't, it felt like as high profile of prospects as the guys that just came out this last year, all of a sudden, hey, growth, development, getting older and getting better, become guys that maybe these NFL teams look to as answers.
You're going to, and the other owners may look at the Daniel Jones example of saying you paid a guy too soon, and now you were kind of looking to get rid of him, so, maybe hold off. Obviously, they have time with Bryce Young to hold off on that.
No, it's a great point, though. There are always ripple effects to these decisions you see other organizations make. We talk about a copycat league, and everyone is constantly checking the notes of the team that's made the mistake to the left or right of them.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., and Mike Golic Sr., and we have updates to the latest Deshaun Watson lawsuit. Reports are that the NFL will not be placing him on the commissioner's exempt list. Now, Sports Illustrated has reported that his contract has language stating that Watson could be in default if he's suspended for an incident that he didn't disclose to the team. So a lot still to unpack, but the Browns seemingly have an out of the guaranteed contract if Watson is suspended. You guys, this is very messy. It keeps getting messier. Kind of seems like two bad things here. Like he disclosed this to the Browns and they took him anyway, which very bad. Or, if he gets suspended, then they have an opportunity to cut ties with him.
Yeah, Jesse, to your point, I think it's bad all the way around in here. And obviously, again, the allegations, which we won't get into the specifics of again today, just because they're heinous in nature. You read these things and they're extremely disturbing and triggering and to be taken incredibly seriously as this goes on, especially given Deshaun Watson's very recent history with allegations similar to this. But to think of then that, yes, either the reality is he has already told this to the Cleveland Browns, who came out and said that they were comfortable making him the highest paid quarterback in football at that time with a fully guaranteed contract, or now this is going to be relevant because he's been bad enough at football to where they would use this as the out to finally do the thing that most people probably wish they hadn't done to begin with. And Dad, that's the part that's most discouraging in here, is how much of what should be something that can be judged on its own, the nature of these actions, the allegations and the accusations and the things that have swirled around him, that instead have all been tied to his ability to pay quarterback one way or the other, where it wasn't. Like for the second chance crowd that always comes in for this stuff, that notes that Deshaun Watson wasn't charged criminally when all these things came out originally, right, and that he settled with 23 of the 24 cases in here. The Browns didn't sign him to the practice squad to come in and try and earn his way back to pro football. They heard he wasn't being criminally charged, and then they offered him a contract that is the bane of the existence of the rest of NFL owners. And until Dak Prescott took the Cowboys to the mat, was the most guaranteed money ever given to a quarterback in the NFL. So that is the kind of endorsement they gave Deshaun Watson, knowing all of this came about. And now because he don't throw the football super well anymore, they could use this to get out of it after similar allegations came up before, and they still looked the other way and signed him to the richest deal ever. So there is no real winner in this situation here when it comes to any part of this situation.
No, you explained everything perfectly. The Texas grand jury in Texas declined criminal prosecution. He settled, as you mentioned, with those victims. He agreed to the deal with Cleveland in March of 22, and in August of 22, he was suspended 11 games. That's when the U.S. District Judge Sue Robinson found through the NFL investigation that there was enough circumstantial evidence to suspend him for 11 games, fine him $5 million, and have him sit. But to your point, you are absolutely right. This is all predicated what the Browns did on his ability to throw the football, because he had a great year in Houston before he demanded a trade and sat, and they didn't play him. And he had a great year. A year so great that at the end of the year, J.J. Watt apologized to him. J.J. Watt apologized to Deshaun Watson for saying, we let you down in a high-scoring shootout that they lost at the end of the season. We let you down. We should have had way more wins than we had, but you were great. And because of that, because he could throw the football, the Browns just turned an eye. Now, again, those will say he was not criminally prosecuted. These were all civil suits, so he had every right, and he did. He had every right to sign, and he did sign with the team until there was an investigation, and then he was suspended and fined for that. He did have a right to sign with the team. And the Cleveland Browns made him the highest paid, most guaranteed money quarterback, which was a head scratcher, but it was because of his ability to throw a football. And now because of his ability to not be able to throw a football, they are going to look to get out of the contract. So be damned anything that goes on off the field. This is all about the talent. And we've talked about this all the time. The better player you are, the more rope you get. The more that people look the other way. I mean, there were a bunch of fans that were disgusted with the Haslams for giving him that deal. But then it's like, okay, he's our quarterback. You know what? We're going to root for the team and root for the quarterback because we want our team to win. And that's a fan. I understand that. You want your team to win. But everything that's going on with him is based off his ability to throw and then not throw a football.
I understand some of the people that still supported the Browns because maybe that's been their entire life and that's been part of their family's life and they've been with that team far before Deshaun Watson got there and will be supporting them far after. But there were also people that came out explicitly in support of Deshaun Watson in a way that was befuddling and disgusting at the time, the way that they chose to go about it. And for those people, watching the way you sold your soul for the quarterback that's now produced in this way for you is unimaginable to me. It's wild to see. And so now this is the position they sit. And honestly, the sad part the other day when the allegations came out is it felt so much like, oh, here we go again. We're dealing again with one of the faces of the league at a position in quarterback that's the CEO type position being publicly accused of sexual assault and is going to be out in the field. And we're going to have to listen to broadcasters go through this and try and fumble through how they explain this between drives. And we're all going to be critical of that when it should be shocking. It should be something that I hope people are still taking very seriously, going to look into very seriously and consider that way, and not just drowned in a sea of, oh, well, we've heard this with this particular player before, and so we somehow are kind of numb to it at this point. We shouldn't be numb to it at this point, and it doesn't seem like that will be the case here. But again, this subjective morality is still something that ultimately comes down to, in the terms of the Browns' decision-making, what he has done on the football field, and that shouldn't be forgotten. So we've got that going on. And again, this is all going to play out now legally, and that is going to go a long way. The NFL is going to have to do their investigation into this the same way that they did last time. These are well-worn pathways that we're used to at this point. But Jesse, looking at the purely football side of this now for the Cleveland Browns, it's also impossible to ignore what happened when this trade first went down on the other side for the Houston Texans, who, man, you want to talk about something that's aged incredibly for them, watching the entire vibe shift around that building, led by the players that they acquired in that deal with Deshaun Watson, Dad. Texas general manager Nick Caserio took over in 2021, acquired all of these, acquired by the Browns picks or other moves involving the Browns picks based off that. The players they brought over: C.J. Stroud, Kenyon Green, John Mechie III, Christian Harris, Thomas Booker, Damian Pierce, Will Anderson Jr., Kalen Bullock, Tank Dell, Kamari Lassiter, Jamal Hill, Cade Stover, and the 2024 first-round pick that they used in the trade for Stephon Diggs. It is unbelievable to see now how it's gone for the Browns after the resources they spent and how it's gone for the Texans, who have completely reshaped their franchise.
You know, we talked about the trade during the game of Goff and Stafford and how it basically has worked out for both teams. It was the rare trade where both teams actually benefited. This is so far and away a one-sided deal on the bad play of Deshaun Watson, the horrible contract that they gave him, and the players that Houston got. I still say the Jimmy Johnson, Herschel Walker trade was the best trade. That it involved a ton of players as well, because that led to Super Bowl victories for Jimmy Johnson. We'll see where this goes. We'll see where Houston certainly has the arrow going up in that direction. So we'll see where it eventually leads. But I mean, it is so ridiculously one-sided. It's almost embarrassing.
It is. And like you said, now we will see. This will continue to be a part of the story if the Houston Texans can ascend to where most people think now they're capable of going. And man, how much that's changed in a year's time for that team, who had a new coach and a new quarterback come in together and in lockstep immediately took a franchise that had been in the outhouse and has brought them all the way back to the penthouse now. So we will wait and see how that continues to progress. But coming up next, we'll wrap up the show the way we always do with this, that, and the third. Would you trust a 10-year-old chef with your life? Because that's what some people are getting ready to do next. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick ones to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network and streaming free on Samsung TV Plus, the Roku channel, Vizio, Watch Free Plus, Google TV, Sling Free Stream, and DraftKingsNetwork.com. A lot of great places that you can watch us now. Or if you miss us live or any of our great guests, shout out to Yahoo Sports' Jason Fitz joining us today to talk about a little NFL, a little college football. You can catch that wherever you get our podcast or available wherever you, available right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. Now let's get to this, that, and the third, which is brought to you by our friends at Knockaround. Incredible polarized sunglasses that aren't going to break the bank for you here. Got my Super Bowl ones. I was rocking out with these yesterday. Dad loves his shark sunglasses. And I got to say, Dad, it's giving very Elton John for you. Like, it's very funky. It's very your era.
Don't let the sun go down on me. Don't let this. Okay.
There we go.
There you go.
You got a song in the middle of all this. If that's not enough for you to want to head to knockaround.com and use code GoJo Golic to pick up your new pair of go-to polarized shades, then I don't know what is. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third. And let's start off with this. A little bit of beer league hero ball here. Roberto Luongo, who is a 19-year NHL veteran goalie, responded to a goalie in need ad on Facebook and went to help a beer league team defeat the 5-time defending champions in their playoff game 4-2. Now, Dad, I ask you, obviously an old-timer coming off the bench like this to help the boys out is exactly what hockey's all about. Should we be concerned that he gave up 2 goals in this game?
So, 5 years out of playing, right? He finished playing in 2019, went and did some coaching and front office work. Yeah, I would be a little surprised because it's a friggin' beer league. All right? I mean, I don't care if he's 10 years out of the NHL. He doesn't have to skate. He doesn't have to, lose speed or thing like that. He's a goalie. He's a goalie. And he gave up 2. Now they won, and it's a cool story that he replied to the beer league. It is a cool story. But it does make you wonder, were these breakaway shots? What kind of shots did he give up? I mean, he's a professional goalie for 1,000 years. And he gave up 2 goals in a beer league.
And goalie is one of the spots in particular, because we were having this debate in the break. What sport has the biggest delta between the guys playing in the beer league and the guys playing in the professional leagues? And we see how hard hockey goals are to come by in the NHL, where you've got some of the best shooters on planet Earth. Are we watching that NHL skill challenge at the All-Star break the targets and put the puck wherever they want? I've gone and shot with buddies of mine that played college hockey, and it's insane to watch the level of skill and dexterity. And those guys have trouble scoring. So maybe this is a beer league full of former pros, Dad. That could also be something that maybe we're discounting here.
I actually saw that on Twitter, unconfirmed, but somebody responded to it and was like, pretty good. The other team had a former NHLer on it too. So I don't know if it's true or not, but it could be.
And the team had to be pretty good, or the beer league had to suck, because they were 5-time defending champs. So it's either a really top-heavy league, or they do have, an NHL player, former NHL player or two. So that's a fair question. If they have a former NHL player, then okay, I could see the 2 goals given up.
Which I like the idea of it just spreading out, and it's basically trial by combat with your chosen champion. It's like, all right, bring out your NHL guy. We'll bring out ours. We'll do a little bit of one-on-one action here with the shootout, and we'll let this decide our beer league. So congratulations to those guys. Awesome story that they'll get to tell. Jesse, let's go from something old to something new here. An incredibly talented 10-year-old that I'm not sure I would trust.
Yeah, so a 10-year-old girl has become the youngest person to be certified to serve a poisonous pufferfish in Japan. Now, if not prepared correctly, the fugu pufferfish can be deadly. And guys, we have grown adults who can't pump their own gas, who can't figure out how to boil water if you're making pasta. Do you really think that we should be trusting a 10-year-old to be serving poisonous fish? And Gojo, you were just in Japan. You missed your opportunity to go eat the poisonous pufferfish.
I know, that's what I'm wondering is like, now is this become a novelty where you bring this 10-year-old to the restaurant and it's like, oh, you can have this cooked by the youngest person certified to cook this, where I'm like, hey, if it's got a potential to kill me, like there's a reason doctors go to school for a long time. Like everyone else, we get to kind of go through undergrad and do all that for this job. I mean, God, the qualifications necessary are so impossibly low. But I am totally fine with lawyers, doctors especially, people that have to operate on other human beings, having to do a lot to get to that point because the stakes are a little bit higher. This is another one of those spots, Dad, where I'm like, maybe I'd like a little more seasoning, pun fully intended, on someone handling my potentially deadly meal.
The 10-year-old is inconsequential to me. I mean, congrats to the 10-year-old for doing what they had to do to be able to prepare the fish so you don't die. Who the hell is eating this fish?
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree with that.
There are plenty of things to eat in this world that are really good that won't kill you. Forgetting the 10-year-old, I wouldn't want a 50-year-old who has been doing it for decades. I wouldn't eat it if they prepared it. I'm not eating something that potentially I could croak from. Why? What is worth it? What, to say I ate a possibly poisonous fish that could have killed me? Who gives a damn?
Probably
I don't
for the
care.
gram. Yeah.
I mean, this is ridiculous. Again, congrats to the 10-year-old girl. Cool. But I'm not eating it from the most experienced chef who can prepare the fugu puffer fish, which could friggin' kill me.
I mean, maybe it tastes good as hell. Maybe it's
no.
worth it.
I'm with you, Senior.
Things.
I agree. There's plenty of things you can eat. We don't need to eat the thing that might actually kill us. And I haven't spent a ton of time around 10-year-olds lately, but like, I gotta imagine their attention span is not great. So,
hey,
yeah.
And last I checked, Wagyu steak doesn't kill you. Mm-hmm. I'll eat the Wagyu steak.
I'm with you.
Probably not a bad idea. I would also choose the Wagyu steak option. And yeah, knife work from listen, again, shout out, probably gifted 10-year-old, probably better at all of that stuff than I'll ever hope to be in my life. But I'm with you guys, probably just going to look for something further down the menu and call it a day. Jesse, speaking of something further down the menu, let's get to the third here and try talk about a food that I'm sure that you probably have very little experience with.
I actually have eaten a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, so I think I can talk about this. I know, I have eaten a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. God is good. So someone posted that this is how they make their peanut butter and jelly. So it's 2 pieces of bread, and they put the peanut butter on one side of one piece, the jelly on one side of one piece, and then they do the same for the second piece, and then they put it together so that like you have peanut butter, jelly, peanut butter. And my question is why? Because nothing here is happening like, I'm confused. It's still just peanut butter and jelly and peanut butter and jelly.
It's for attention.
Yeah.
It's for this. Like, this is a cry for help. This is someone that desperately needs my likes and retweets on here. And to be clear, you're going to get the engagement. Like, I'm going to figure out something snarky to go say and quote tweet this with after the show because I'm an addict, like everybody else walking around that damn website. But, Dad, I could see no discernible reason. You know what? If I was like a restaurant and you wanted to do an elevated PB&J, an open-faced PB&J, and spread it out like that so it was cute and I could photograph it for later on here, I wouldn't fault you that because I'm in a restaurant. I'm already paying you to prepare a PB&J at that point, which should be outside of anybody's mind. But I digress. We've all done worse. In that instance, yes. At home, I'm not trying to do that. It's about efficiency when I'm at home slamming PB&Js.
Yeah. I'm not taking that extra time to do it. It's all getting mixed inside of you anyway. I mean, so it doesn't matter to me that they do this, but it just takes more time to do. I have always said, stranded on a remote island and you only had one thing to eat. For me, it would be PB&Js. I got to ask you, Jesse, you said you've had PB&Js. Have you prepared the PB&J or have you had it prepared for you and maybe the crust cut off?
No, I have prepared it for myself like an adult.
Okay. Oh, don't act like that was a crazy question, okay?
Well, Jesse, nothing is off limits with you, dog.
When I was, I know, I've done this to myself. When I was pregnant, I actually had a period of time where I was hyper fixated on peanut butter and jelly, and I had like one every 2 days.
Yes. Well, we hope everyone listening is hyper fixated on us and choose to have us every day. If you do, download, subscribe, rate, review the show, leave it a 5-star rating, make a PB&J. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.